And we are live. Thanks everybody for stopping by once again to my channel. Here we got Jordan going to talk a little bit about feminism, whether it's good for society and what it involves, and the activism that that they do in the community. But before we get on that topic, hey Jordan, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. I really do.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So you are you an active feminist yourself, or do you just believe in the cause or the message that feminism has?
I've been starting to get more and more into activism. I'm more just a feminist, by nature, instead of going out and really like making change happen. I used to actually be conservative, and then
Really?
once I took a women's history course in college, and the connections just started to come together. Like, it was given a name for something that I like kind of internally knew but didn't have a name for, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So
it does. No, I get that. No, I think I get that.
mhm.
Um,
So
so and how long ago was this that you went into college and found this name for acronym? Maybe, I don't know, a name for an internalization that you felt.
yeah, it was probably around 8 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So I slowly, once I took that course, and I started researching things on my own, and started consuming more feminist media, and seeing the other perspective and the other side. And the more that I did that, the more I realized, I am I am a feminist, and I believe, in most, not all, of everything that they believe in. So um it's been a journey.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you were a conservative. So you were a conservative what, 8 years ago, about a decade ago, or
Yeah,
and then after you went to college, um that's when things started to make sense for you.
right.
So if you would kind of bring us up to date, let's go through the history a little bit.
Hmm.
So right now, I believe we're in what they would call a third wave feminism.
I think we're technically in the fourth wave, but
Okay.
I think there's a bit of debate about that. But yeah, I think we're in the fourth wave now.
Okay. So you want to go over a little bit of the woman's suffrage and through the waves a little bit, just cover
Sure.
I guess a general view of each wave.
Yeah, sure. So the first wave was women's suffrage. So it was based on gender equality in the law. And so they fought for women's suffrage. When I say they, I mean feminists. Um, and then we finally got the right to vote. And that was, well, I should say, when white women got the right to vote in 1920. Black women didn't get the right to vote until much, much later. And so then the second wave was more during like the 60s, 70s, 80s, where they tried to get equality for all of the different intersections, right? So Black people, you know, the LGBTQ community, things like that. And it was more for sexual freedom. So, they fought for abortion rights. They fought for, what else did they fought for a lot of different things to try to get sexual equality. They were anti-pornography at that time. They were, generally they wanted people to be able to say no to sex, whereas before the default was to, submit to the man, right? Third wave, was more sexual positivity, where you can try and express your sexuality by saying yes to sex, like and embrace your sexuality in that sense. And then the third to fourth wave, I think why there's a bit of a debate is that the fourth wave is more like online activism, with the invention of social media and things like that to try to further feminist ideology. But in my opinion, we're still kind of in the third wave. So it's just a little bit different for the third and fourth wave. So those are kind of the waves.
And maybe, with the COVID thing, that will help push, if we're not in the fourth wave already, that will help push to the fourth wave, because as we were talking about before, everything being, through camera, I mean, kind of like what we're doing. They do learning like this. Now we talked about, my other streams that I did, they can't do the work that they were able to do outside anymore. So maybe that will really help it push it into the fourth wave, considering the circumstances and everything.
Well, I think that definitely helped with Black Lives Matter. We
Sure.
actually had the time to go out and have the protests and the marches and do all that because we were all at home.
Right.
And a lot of people aren't working right now. And so, yeah, I think it probably would help if there was a push and need for it.
So one of the things that you mentioned a little bit, well, mostly that I guess stuck out to my ears was the sexual liberation of what does, because a lot of people take it differently, but what does that mean exactly, I guess, to you or to feminism?
Well, in my opinion, feminism is all about having the choice to do what you want to do. So it's about choosing, if you want to be a sex worker, then you should have the right to be a sex worker, kind of a thing. If you want to just stay with one man, you have the right to just do that, kind of giving you the freedom to not only say yes, but say no. And having that specific choice. That's kind of the ideology of it, because women didn't have a choice. You got married, you stayed with the one man, and if you were a lesbian or you didn't want to get married, then it was frowned upon in society. Your family
Sure,
was
frowned upon, but it wasn't, I guess I would make the argument, you know, uh, frowned upon. Yes, it's a societal norm, it's a culture thing,
mhm.
but I think to say that you just couldn't do that is a little strong depiction of, because you can do that. I mean, but you're just gonna suffer shame or, what have you. But shame don't mean death, and shame don't mean necessarily you can't work and feed your kids and pay rent, and you know what I'm saying. Like you're still able to survive.
I mean, maybe nowadays, but I think,
Okay.
that would neglect the historical aspects of it. Um, where women, if they denied getting married and if they pushed back on that, a lot of these women were considered hysterical and they were put in asylums, or if they had power outside of their husbands, they were ostracized and even killed. They're like the Salem witch trials, like that's
Yeah.
a
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
there's the feminist theory that because these women had, property outside of being married because their husbands had died, that they had power and they needed to stop them from having power, so they hung everybody. That's like a feminist theory, we
Sure.
don't know the true cause of the Salem witch trials, but within the context,
Yeah.
women did get killed for,
I'm
speaking out.
sure. I'm sure they did. I mean, it was. I mean, you're going way back to Puritan days, and
Yeah.
a lot of religion. I think plays in that too.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I actually I don't necessarily think the woman's suffrage, like when it all began, I don't
Mhm.
necessarily think that was a bad thing.
Mhm.
Um, but in my eyes, it seems like the more waves we get of feminism, the worse it gets, the more extreme it gets, if you will, maybe.
Well, I understand your perspective. But feminism is all about, equality with men and women, right? And so that is the basis of what feminist principles are and what they're trying to achieve. And so with the waves going on, um, you have to kind of think about, what is the male equivalent of what feminists are trying to achieve. So, with sexual liberation, men can go out and have sex with as many women as they want, and then they're called a stud, and they're called, like, it's celebrated. And so,
Can I
like,
can I ask you, are we gonna, when you say that, are we talking about like America or Western culture, or just as like a world perspective?
Western culture.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Because
I mean,
I actually want to come back to this because I actually have a lot of viewpoints on this.
hmm
With the equality of rights with men and women.
hmm
Um, but I want to come back because we both agree that the woman's suffrage probably wasn't a bad movement. It was probably a needed thing because, like you said, I mean, they're throwing women in lakes, and if they drown, they're not a witch, and if they rise up, they're a witch, and you got to kill them anyway. So
You're right.
I
Yeah.
don't, I do not think that was a good test. you know,
No.
or the right thing to do. And it was largely, like you said, I mean, it was pretty much women that they did that to.
hmm
So let's focus on what we agree on is that the woman's suffrage. Why and how did that become to start?
Well, so in America, right, we have the principle of representation of the people by the people. So we were having only men vote for basically what would amount to men's issues. They're not going to take into consideration what women need, right? And so women weren't being represented in the government. And, there was a lot of different things that they wanted to fight for. Actually, the women's suffrage movement helped gain, before we even gained the right to vote, the women's suffrage movement actually helped secure an 8-hour workday. Before, women and children were in factories, like working 16-hour days with like crap conditions, and um you know uh not being paid much at all. And so, men were able to vote and get people in who would fight for their workers' rights and things like that. But women
Sure.
had to create their own, own unions.
Yeah.
Women weren't allowed in unions. So they had to do all this extra work. And so, they just weren't being represented. And actually, what's interesting is that Black men got the right to vote before white women. And then poor Black women didn't get the right to vote until,
Last in line. Yeah.
right. But, you know, as a country who thought that, Black people were like 2/3 of a person, they still had more rights, if they were men than white women. So like that's how, misogynistic as a society we were. You know, I'm not saying that black men shouldn't have gotten the right to vote, or
Right.
first or whatever, but I think it just shows how deeply women were treated as second class citizens, you know.
Yeah.
And so we finally got the right to vote, and make our voices heard, at least in government. So
Right. Right. And I like I said, I agree with that. I think
mhm,
you know you covered race a little bit in there. No, if you're an American citizen, I think you should
mhm,
have the right to vote regardless of gender, race, whatever. I
mhm.
think you should have. That's just, I don't know, common sense to me. And I don't, and you're absolutely right. In a lot of aspects, I wouldn't say all of them, but I think that you are absolutely right when you say that men are not going to vote on women issues. They're just, because it don't concern them really. I mean,
Mhm.
so I agree with you on that, and I agree that the women's union, eh, let's think about that. So like we're painting a cultural context here of how culture viewed and treated women, but yet in this same culture they were able to start their own union and really thrive in a culture that focused on what women should not do. Do you kind of consider that like a little bit of luck that it took off the way
Well,
it did?
I mean, I would kind of disagree with that, because
Okay.
the unions were already created and women were just excluded. So they had to work even that much harder. They didn't have the foundation of having their own unions. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it was like an extra step. I mean,
They had to
yeah,
start from scratch. There was no foundation to begin with.
right.
Yeah.
Well, and most of the women that were able to do it were rich, or
Yeah.
um more educated. I mean, women at that time didn't have the same education as men. They can go into any field that they wanted to, but they had the time and the ability to do that, and get pushed or push for unions and workers' rights and things like that, because they had that privilege. So, I mean, it is kind of lucky, but it's lucky in a sense that, it was circumstantial, you know, um, based on how you were born, essentially, or how you
Right.
married.
Yeah, I'm hearing echo. I think that the common or the original start of feminism did have was good and was needed. But the longer, I think we agree that the women deserve the right to vote. Um,
Mhm.
like you said, slaves were freed and given more rights before women, and I think that probably all should have happened at the same time. But understanding Europe and Puritans coming over, they were coming over with same religion, same traditions. The monarch, the patriarch, all those things. Um, so the woman's suffrage just basically said, we want the right to vote, we want the right to work, with the same opportunities in the workforce as men.
Right.
We're going to cover a lot of this later. Okay, so the first wave of feminism, explain that a little bit and what it is.
So first wave was just trying to get gender equality down, getting the right to be educated, the right to own your own property, the right to, um, have control of your own bank account, just a lot of things that men took for granted, and they had control over women with their property, with their money. Women couldn't have separate bank accounts. Um, women didn't have the right to their husband's property. It just, there were a lot of different things under the law
Yeah.
where women didn't have the same
So
things that men had.
sure. So okay. So now we're talking about same bank. They wanted same bank accounts, rights to the husband's property. Um, with just those two things right now, so with the bank account, most women actually don't want separate bank accounts, I think, from their husbands. They want the same bank account. And as far as the property goes, um more than likely when she married him, it wasn't her property to begin with. So why should she be able to have that? I guess is my question.
So, first of all, the women may nowadays want to have a shared bank account just because it's more convenient, to have a pool to choose from. But at the time, women didn't have control over their own money, meaning they couldn't
Okay.
do what they needed to go out and do. Like, if someone else controls your own purse strings, then you can't go and leave them because then you're destitute, right? And so women didn't have the freedom to go out and get away from potentially abusive situations, or oppressive situations, or go out and spend their own money on education or things like that. And then to your second point, I'm sorry, what was what was your last point?
Well, so the question was, if the woman married the man, she always has the right to choose which man. I don't think we're that far off where we're picking picking the men for our daughters type deal at that time. So if she could easily marry the man with the largest property if she, whatever, but that was always his property prior. So why should she have the rights to what was his to begin with?
Because they're married, and as a union, you're seen as, you know
Do you think that's fair?
I think, well, I mean, it's the law now.
Right, it's
I
law. But
mean,
I mean, if we're talking about equality here, I mean, do you think that's fair? If we're talking about equality, because that I think that has some weight to it, you know.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think that if you join with someone and say, we're going to share a life together, that means you're going to share your entire life. You can't just say, we're going to share a life, and then, but you don't get, to enjoy the house, or you don't get to enjoy, you know, uh, clothing, or, whatever. I
Sure.
mean, you know, um, it's just the way that women were kept oppressed, really, because they didn't have the rights to the property. And then sometimes when the husbands died, it didn't go to the wife, it went to
Sure.
the
Yeah.
son.
Yeah. Sure.
So, like, they never had that chance to really, take control over that aspect of their lives. And, you know, yeah, they had the ability somewhat to choose who they wanted to, but you also have to understand too that some men become more abusive after marriage, like
Yeah.
before they're being court, when they're courted, you're on your best behavior, I
Right.
mean, and then it can turn like that once you're married. And then you have no way out because you don't have money, resources, education,
Sure.
what have
No,
you.
I think that's a valid. I think that's mostly a valid point. I mean, we all play the part that we're supposed to play for the time being, I guess. And
Mhm.
then yeah, which I guess is why they say now that if you're gonna, date for a very long time, so that person. And I think for just today's situation. I think for the
Mm-hmm.
majority of the part, red flags are there, but they choose to ignore them and still get into a relationship. Knowing that because everybody they're so quick to get married and divorced today. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that people are getting married just as fast as they're getting divorced. It's almost, it's really ironic. Um,
Well, we're human. We make mistakes. I mean,
Right.
you
Yeah. Yeah.
know.
No. Yeah. 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 I get it. I mean, mistake. Like I said, and I agree with you on that part. I think
Mm-hmm.
that, you can get into a relationship and then find out, boom, I'm in an abusive relationship. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so here we have a question that's kind of in line with this. Um, okay. Russian. He asks, would sharing a life include a mutual interest and participation in intellectual pursuits?
I would say so. Back in the day, again, we didn't get the right to vote until the 1920s or in 1920. So you have to think about they were fighting for suffrage long before that. It took decades.
Yeah,
Um, and when you married a man, the man could allow you to be educated, you know, um, but that wasn't always the case that you were allowed to. And what you were allowed to do, you were limited on.
sure.
So, um, yeah, under equality, and sharing a life, you would want to probably be equal to your partner in terms of intellectual capacity. I would say.
Okay. So correct me if I'm wrong. So far we got the woman's suffrage,
Mhm.
which was basically a political thing, and a work thing. We want the same jobs as men can get, and we want to be able to vote on women's issues and men's issues, just like men get to vote on both issues. And then wave one had more to do with 50-50 in relationships and marriages and stuff. Would you say it was more, we want half, or, and if we have it all, then we'll give you half, is that fair to say, or was there more to it than that?
I mean, it's gender equality across the board. So
Okay.
under the law, within marriages, things like that. I mean, it wasn't until later into the later waves that we really got into, like sexual equality and LGBTQ rights and things like that. So I would say that's pretty basically correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So which had more of an impact, the woman's suffrage or the first wave, do you think? Which
The first wave, I would say the first wave.
you think
Yeah.
more changed under the first wave than the woman's suffrage? More
Well,
changes made?
suffrage was a part of the first wave. So,
Okay.
yeah, I would say that the first wave in general gave us more rights. We saw workers' rights, with the unions, like I said, and, we saw women's suffrage, and there was the pushback on education and things like that, becoming more and more educated. I don't think I think we saw the first woman doctor in like 1846 or something like that. Before then, we weren't allowed in medical fields. Even though there were woman nurses, we weren't allowed to be educated at a doctoral level.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, because again, at that time, men had the right to choose whether you got an education or not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, do you do you think there was good reason um why the patriarchy was alive then? Do you think there was like any reason at all besides it's a monarch and this is what the monarch believes and this is how we're going to run our society? I guess you see any positives to a patriarchal system, considering we're in the first wave.
Yeah, I view it as two separate questions, honestly. I think religion has a lot to do with it.
Sure. Yeah.
I know America was founded on separation of church and state, but we were still very Western culture and as a whole is very Christianity based, I would say. And I think that plays a huge part in patriarchal societal structures, um, because of, you know, the story of Adam and Eve and, the Virgin Mary and,
Right. So it goes all the way back. Yeah. To like, you can say the first world known religion, Judaism. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, even the story of Adam and Eve, like you said, in Christianity and, um, you know, um, actually, I actually think that all religions have that beginning. It's just a different names, but same storyline essentially. But yeah, you're right. Man was here first, and then woman was made to keep him company. Essentially, is what the story is.
I mean, yeah, I would, well, that is the story, but I mean, there's different sects of Christianity that don't literally take the Bible word for word, right? They're just parables or
Sure. Yeah.
stories to make a point. Um, so like that might be what the Bible says, but it you really can't in this modern day and age, you can't take it literally, with
Sure.
the science that we have now. We know like dinosaurs roamed the earth millions of years ago, not just like 6,000, so um we can't really take it literally, but I think at the time that definitely contributed. And as far as like seeing the patriarchy as good, I don't want to put a value judgment on any kind of like societal structure in and of itself. I mean, there's matriarchal societies and things like that, just based on culture.
Can
So,
do you know I know there's like one in Kenya.
mhm,
Um
Native American cultures, a lot of them are more matriarchal too, where the
I know,
women are more revered.
yeah, and I know the Jewish community, the
Mhm.
woman technically, if you wears the pants of the house, if you will. Yeah, so I shoot me if you want, but I feel like the only out of all them matriarchal systems that the Kenya, Judy and Native American, if there's more, but I feel like the only successful one out of all that would be the Jewish people. Um, so would it be safe to say that patriarchy has a better success rate than a matriarchal system? I don't know. I'm
Well,
just
I would ask what your definition of successful is because,
It's fair. Yeah.
we killed a ton of Native Americans when, I'm saying that as like a person with European heritage. Like,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
we came over and killed a bunch of Native Americans. If we had allowed their culture to be, functioning as it was, I think they would still be successful. But we killed a large portion of their um their people,
Yeah.
so if that hadn't have happened, I think you would still see cultures, different tribes and stuff like that
Yeah.
you know are more successful than if we hadn't killed them off. I
Right.
mean, to
Right.
put it bluntly.
Yeah. 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 No, you're good. You're good. And I don't want to get too far off track here.
No, I know.
So I'm going to bring it back. The Russian has I think, another good question here. Um, so it's keeping in mind that a man created feminism. I didn't even know that. Um, do you think feminism would be different if it were created by a woman? And if so, in what aspects do you suppose feminism would be better? That's a great question. I didn't even know it was created by a man.
I don't. I I would like to know what man he thinks created it. Men definitely had to help women to
Sure,
get the rights that they had. So
that's a fair, yeah.
if that's what he's saying, then Like,
I think
absolutely.
yeah, I think that is because that would make sense. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that, because without obviously, I mean, we're all saying the obvious here. Without a man somewhere in the background pulling strings, this, we I don't think we'd be having it
Right.
in a patriarchal system that we had back then.
Right. I would agree with that. That's why feminists like to have male allies because, men can and should help women to achieve equality just as much as, like white people should help people of color achieve equality, because we're all in this together. We're all human, you know. So yeah, if it was just women having to do all the heavy lifting and, I mean, we still did. But if there were no men helping, then we wouldn't be where we are today. Because we weren't in power. We weren't in roles that allowed us to, make laws, make changes. So yeah, I don't think we would be there without allies. Or at least not on the scale that we are today.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think that's correct. I think that's right. Um, I'll just ask you real quick. Does a Maria Charles Fourier ring any bells? He's saying
No.
it's a phrase from utopian. It's a phrase that he created feminism and utopian socialism. So therefore feminism was created by man. Um, I don't I don't know about all that. Yeah.
I haven't heard that. I mean, I know that like Karl Marx and
Sure.
other socialists have had theories that also apply to women, but they didn't specifically mention women until, after kind of feminist movements picked up a little bit and then, they kind of included that. But yeah, I haven't heard of that. I'd be interested in
So you
reading about it.
um you are saying that socialism and feminism are intertwined, or nowadays, maybe not before, but today, do you think it is, or
Actually, it was back,
okay,
back in the day. I would say, a lot of it was because workers' rights,
with
when women were able to go in, they were being paid less than men. They were in worse conditions than men. They were, child labor too. We were treated like the children were in the child, in
sure.
factories and stuff. So, yeah, there is a socialist aspect to feminism. Um, you know, I'd say that's a personal preference nowadays, if you identify as socialist or not, but I think you can still find some threads in feminism today with socialism.
Um, what this is one thing that I've just noticed or maybe experienced, but it seems to me, not so much, um, socialists or communists, but left and right, just to simplify it. I've never, I personally, I have honestly never met a conservative feminist woman
Hmm.
or even a conservative feminist man. So it does seem like, any feminist that you meet, man or woman, is going to be on that left side of the political spectrum.
I get your point and I would agree to it to a certain degree. Um, but I think because people don't know the true definition of feminism, that they don't identify as feminists. When I was conservative, I thought feminists were like bra burning, you know, lonely, old women with a bunch of cats. Like
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
my image. That was what I kind of was taught by. I don't know if anybody really taught me specifically what a feminist was, but like that was kind of the image that was portrayed to me.
Sure.
But, you know, once I got educated essentially on what it was and what it meant, you know, that feminists believe men and women are equal, you know, and should be equal. Then I was like, well, then I guess I'm a feminist because I believe that, and I would think conservatives could agree on that. They might disagree on the way feminists go about achieving that equality, or you know, certain parts of feminism, but I don't agree with everything feminists do either, and I'm still feminist. So,
And I was going to ask you that later in the stream too. Um, so I think with the, you know, if we're, you know, it's pretty general what we're saying here, but if you cut the left and right, I think that for the most part, the people that identify themselves on the right when they look at feminism is like it's a role thing. It's a social construct, or not but a fiber to social and family unit. And that family unit, if you have a good, strong family unit, and you know, mom's playing mom, dad's playing dad, you know, there's roles that we have to play, then in return you have a good, strong country. I think that's I hope I kind of hit that somewhat on the head of the nail there.
yeah, well, so feminists today want you to have a choice. You know, if you
Sure.
want to be a mom and stay at home and help take care of everything in the household, then that is your choice. It just shouldn't have to be forced on you like it was,
Sure.
is
No, and
essentially what the.
yeah, I get that. Yeah, no,
Mhm.
totally. Yeah, you should have a choice if you want to be married or not. You should have a choice if you want to have kids or not. And we're gonna go right into second feminism wave here, but I do feel like, you know, at the same time you have that choice, but
Mhm.
I also think that if you made that choice, then you should, in some circumstances, you should live with that choice as well. I mean, because and this is where I'm saying we'll probably get into this with the second feminism. So maybe what is second wave feminism?
So that's about sexual freedom and freedom from being oppressed. So, sexual freedom meaning like you have the right to say no to sex. You know, you don't have to submit to a man and cater to his every sexual need, or his every need really. um, and trying to liberate women in that sense, in the home, as well as trying to get, you know, more equality, you know, and with the LGBTQ community and things like that. Just trying to, um, I mean, it's it's complicated. It's not like you
Yeah,
know,
no,
a
yeah,
one sentence definition, but
yeah. We got
that's at
plenty
the
of
root of
time. Do the best
it.
you can. We got time.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, it is, the second wave is about family life, essentially, you know, and um what the family structure is and how it should be changed, or at least give women the freedom to go into the workplace if they so choose, you know, and give them the ability to have their own money and do what they need to do, or be educated in the way that they want to be too, um, separate from having their husband say it's okay, you know.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So far, I agree with you on a lot of it so far. But I think where if we had another guest on here, um, second wave feminism were really where the it cuts in half for people, I think. Because there's a lot there. Like I said, when you're talking about, you know, again, if you break it down to, you know, left and right,
Mm-hmm.
the right, like I said before, the right feels that you know, the second wave totally destroyed the family unit. Totally destroyed it because one of their things is that, you know, don't get me wrong here. If you're getting beat by your husband or your boyfriend, absolutely, you should have the right to leave. You should. I mean, no one has. Even if you're a man, you're getting beat by your wife or girlfriend. Leave. I mean, you know, it's. I don't want anyone to get beat or put in a bad situation like that. Um, at the same time as that, what I see and what I've experienced is that women are, for the most part, the ones that claim divorce, and they're the ones with the problem, if you will, after a choice was made to marry the guy that they didn't have a problem with before. Aside from the beating, you know, like I said, if you're getting beat, get out. 100% totally agree with that. But, you know, for example, let's just use something for an example. Alcoholism. Most of the time, you knew he was an alcoholic before you married him. Just as an example. So, in something like that, not an abusive alcoholic, just he drank too much or whatever.
Mhm.
In something like that, I don't think it's right that a woman can divorce, have that choice because she's the one with the problem now, have that choice to leave him, take everything half, not half of what he has, and get the kids. And I mean, if you look at the statistics, broken homes is worse than homes that are together.
So well, there are research studies that show that kids are generally better in a separated home versus if you stay in an unhappy marriage. I mean, it's not a clear cut thing, like it's definitely situational, but I would say that, on the whole, um, children will benefit from seeing what a healthy relationship is. So if you're no longer in a happy marriage, um, then you're going to model that behavior to your kids if you stay in an unhappy marriage, and then basically teach your kids, well, you know, this is the life you made, this is the bed you made, you have to lie in it and then be unhappy for the rest of your life or whatever. you know Model behavior is modeled, and then you kind of have like a cycle of kids getting married, once they grow up, and going out and then being in an unhappy marriage and thinking that they can't leave because that's what their parents are expecting me to do. And as far as the family unit goes, I think we're seeing different definitions of what a family could be. You know,
That's true. Yeah.
I don't think that a family has to be a man, woman, child, or two children, two and a half children.
Yeah, no, it could
um,
just be yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, like, sometimes kids are going to be negatively affected by divorce. Like, that's just a fact. But
Sure.
I think staying in a place where you're unhappy, kids pick up on that. You pick up on the fights, and you pick up on um, the just general oppressive feeling, I think, as a
Um,
kid.
okay. No, I get what you're saying. I guess what I'm trying to put out is that, so a woman marries a man that, had an alcohol problem, not abusive
Mhm.
or anything like that, just had an alcohol problem.
Mhm.
She decides, I don't like this. I'm out of here. Okay. Because she's unhappy.
Mhm.
And that's fine. We all get unhappy. I understand. So she decides to leave the husband, and in most states, the woman will get the kids. So now, because she made the choice to jump into a relationship and found out later that she's not happy, by breaking away from that relationship, she has made the kids unhappy and the husband for the sole purpose of her happiness. I don't think that's right. Now, again, if you're getting whopped on, leave,
Mm.
leave. But I feel like there are certain things where, you know, people can take advantage of cultures and situations and laws and things like that.
Well, I mean, yeah, you can take advantage of anything if you want to. But I think to your point, I think women shouldn't automatically get children. I think that's part of like the thing that feminists believe, some women aren't made to be mothers, and like
Sure,
that's okay.
sure. Yeah.
Men can be just as nurturing as what women are expected to be. So, a lot of laws are kind of patriarchal in the way that they view the mother as being the nurturing, care providing person, but that's not reality. Not every
Well,
person is fit for that.
you're right. Generally speaking, you're absolutely right. I don't think, to say that you're a woman, therefore every woman has to be this way. But I think at the same time, there is a lot of biological factors. I mean, women are more of a nurturing kind. Women are more of a caretaker compared to, and I think that's a biological thing. I don't think that's necessarily, we were trained to be this way. I think with them lines, it's more biological. Women are more sensitive. They feel more.
I would disagree with that. I mean,
Okay.
women are, we have hormones, so do
Right.
men.
Right.
And yeah, women breastfeed, and, back in like hunter gathering days, they, had to stay near the children to breastfeed and take after their children because that was where the food supply was. But
Sure.
nowadays we have formula, we have breast pumps, things
Yep.
like that, where we don't have to stay near the children to take care of them. And
So,
so,
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
oh no, so I was just going to say, men then went off in these hunter gathering societies to go hunt because they biologically didn't have the setup to provide for the children. But there's nothing like internally within women that says we're nurturing. There's not like a nurturing part of our brains that
I think there is though. Yeah, no, I think there is. But that's we disagree to or agree to disagree. I almost goofed that one up. um, yeah, so yeah, I think on that we're gonna have to agree to disagree that there's a biological factor there. So a little bit on, again, we're talking about second wave feminism. This is the equality in relationships and in the home, and we're kind of just discussing the family unit a little bit here.
Mhm.
So, as far as like, the hunter gatherer situation where we had to stay near the children, the mothers had to stay near the children to feed them and things like that. But I think there's a little bit more than just the feeding aspect. Now take example, now we got, mom working, dad working. And again, through my experiences and what I see, we have children running amok because they don't know right or wrong. There's no one there to grow with the child or help the child grow and set guidelines and barriers, because now instead of just the man working, you have the man and the woman working. And so they decided, both of them, not just the woman, not just the man, they both decided to have kids. And now there's no one there to set the kids right.
Well, I mean, going back to, socialism, crossing with feminism,
Okay.
I'd say, what is the reason for that? In a capitalistic society, we're expected to basically make money work, and we have to pay bills and we have to do this. And then with the advent of social media, and then we have, there's just so much going on in the
There is.
world
There is.
that we don't have the capability to stay home if we want to, because um cost of living is so high.
It is. Yeah.
There's a lot of people that have to work 2, 3, 4 jobs to get by, and I would say that, as far as kids, not being disciplined, not, you know, knowing how to behave, that is a part of just bad parenting. It's not because women are working, you know. Um, my parents worked. I think I was raised good,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah. Of course. Yeah, yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like it's just it's not a reflection of
It's
women being in the
it's
workforce.
interesting because I use the same argument a lot of times with my grandma. My grandma
Mhm.
stayed home and took care of the kids. She is not a bad woman at all. Do you think your grandma is a bad woman because she stayed home and took care of the kids? And, I mean, I use the same argument, like, well, look at me, I turned out fine, with
Yeah.
both of my parents working, so yeah, no, I use the same argument, just, the different side, of course, with grandma. Um,
Well,
yeah,
and I would say too, like, sorry to interrupt.
no, you're all right. No, good.
I would say too, like, I think every generation kind of feels like that, like, oh,
Yeah.
kids these days, my God,
Yeah, I know it too. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm a millennial, but
Okay,
looking at
boomer.
right, right. But
Yeah.
I mean, looking at the kids nowadays, it's like, I'm even shocked about what they're learning in school right now. They're not learning how to write cursive and, things like
They
that,
don't
where
even
it's just
know cursive. Yeah, you
right.
write cursive, they're like, "Is that Greek?"
Right. So I'm just saying, I think, it's not because women are in the workforce. I think it's just cultural perspectives and changing of, generations and things like that. Um,
Which is, I think, which is because feminism is doing its job. I mean, you don't get these kind of cultural shifts if feminism wasn't working in the system.
yeah, that's true.
So you could. I mean, I'll give you. I think you're absolutely right for most cases. Is that our the way the economy is and the way the financial system is set up anymore is, yeah, you have to work, sadly, multiple jobs to stay alive, or I guess to go. You have to work multiple jobs to get the finer things. I mean, you could work, not easily, but you could work one job, take care of a girlfriend and maybe a kid or two on a single job, but you're not going to have that flat screen TV every year. You're not
Right.
going to have that brand new car every 5 years. You're not going to. I mean, so it's a give and take type deal. And I guess in not every situation, but in some situations, um, and again, to me, you got to choose what's more important to you in that family. And
Yeah.
I don't want to come off as like you're choosing, the luxury things over your kids, but essentially, I mean, if you don't want to, man or woman, whatever, if a parent don't want to stay home with the kid to raise the kid and guide them and direct them and teach them morals and values and whatever, um, you're working multiple jobs to get that new TV instead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would agree and disagree.
Sure.
Um, I agree with you mostly, but I just think that, um, you know, because of capitalism, like I'm not an anti-capitalist. I don't want to come across as an anti-capitalist, but like, trickle down economics has
Okay.
created a larger barrier, or a greater gap in wealth,
Sure.
and so I think that has a lot to do with it, economically speaking. And we were raised, well, I should say I was raised to believe that you go to college, you'll get a good job and you'll get good pay. And then you come to find out, like, basically a college degree today is almost like
It's work.
either,
Yeah.
a associate's or a high school degree. So,
Right.
um, and I think a lot of that has to do with just that gap that was created by, Reagan era trickle down economics.
Sure. Um, I don't. I don't think feminism helped the necessarily the gap. Um, you know, because you're still, even with multiple jobs, you're still struggling. You know, you're just not
Mhm.
getting the, you know, there's always there's always that step, you know, the finer things, the finer things, the finer things, you know what I mean? There's always going to be that. There's always going to be that, you know, chase the cheese, if you will, the mouse in the cage type deal, you know. So yeah, again, I think you know, it comes down to a lot of what's more important to you in that family unit. And I, like I said, I want to mention again, this is where I think a lot of people is that second wave feminism, kind of like, because I, you know, even on the first wave and women's suffrage, I'm with you. I'm with you. Like, you know, I think people should be equal. But I think when it comes to the second wave feminism, a lot of people began to feel, think, and see that it isn't becoming equal as much as one is kind of crashing down on the other. Um, and I, you know, and I'm sure you've heard of that before yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I know like abortion's a big one in the second wave
Yeah.
that people disagree with. You know, and birth control and things like that, depending upon, you know, your religious beliefs and moral beliefs too. Um, I understand the split. Um, but I think like again, kind of going back to what I said earlier, you kind of have to think about what is the male equivalent. Um, and men
What
don't
is
get
the
pregnant.
yeah? What? Well, I mean, no, that's an interesting question, especially with abortion, though, right? I mean, what's the because um you know, again, we're going on woman's choices. So if you know, and we, you know, woman got more of a choice with the, you know, saying no to men and the sex, and you know, so we can, I think we can establish that now if a woman says no, I mean, you're always going to have these sickos out here, you know, but if a woman says no, for the majority of men, it's no. Um, so, but at the same time, hold on, let me, for the majority, you know, there's always them sickos, you know, I mean, there's always the, you know, the pushers or what have, you know, um, but so what is the equivalent, right? Because they made the choice to accept the seed. And you know, the man never, I guess the equivalent would be jerking off. I mean, because a man is always trying to give life, and a woman has made the choice. Yes, I will receive your seed to produce life, and then oh no, never mind. I'm gonna. But I do. Let me point out. Let me point out. I do feel abortion is 100% good if you're raped or incest, even because I know I couldn't do it. Genetic factors. God forbid if I had, um, you know, a child with a disorder, it'd be so hard on me. Really, I mean, it'd be for uh, even for two parents in the house, it'd be so hard.
I mean, I work with adults with developmental disabilities, so
Sure, right, right.
I know what it's like
Like,
for the
sure,
families. Yeah,
yeah.
no, I get it.
So
Um,
I do agree with abortion, but not like on just a so open door. You know, I agree with it that there should be circumstances, if you will.
okay.
What
Well,
do
I
you
mean,
what do you think the equivalent? I mean, let's go back because that's the point you were making is the
mhm.
equivalency. And that's a question I'd like to ask you. What is the equivalency? A male right to a woman's right to abortion?
Well, I mean, honestly, I would say that as a man, if you have sex with a woman, you know that she A can get pregnant and B choose to abort the embryo, fetus, whatever you want to call it, if she so chooses. Like you're making just as much as a woman is making the choice to have sex and she might get pregnant, you're as a man making the choice of having sex where she might do what she wants with her own body.
So
So,
you're saying a man a man already accepts the contract, if you will, by
mhm.
having sex with a woman that the woman has then that right 100% to have the abortion.
Well, I'm just saying, like, it is a possibility. I mean, obviously, I think it's different. Like, if you're a couple, you're coupled, whether you're boyfriend, girlfriend,
Sure.
husband, wife, whatever. Like, I think you probably should talk about those things before you have sex,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
your views on abortion? What have, like, common sense. But I mean, if you're just going out having one night stands with people, I think like you have to know in the back of your mind what those possibilities are. And, that is like the consent that you're giving. Like if you didn't want to have a child with that woman, like wear a condom, or make sure she's on birth control, or whatever. But you're basically giving
I
your
wouldn't
own
even make sure she's on birth control. I just take it into my own hands and I'm wearing a condom.
well, I
Two of
mean,
them.
that would be that would be the smart thing to do. That's what I would recommend, like, but men, have been known to be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna wear a condom, and then the woman's not on birth control, and then
Yeah.
midway through they take it off, and women are none the wiser, and then they get pregnant. And so
Sure.
like feminists would view that as a form of rape. You consented to having sex.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, because you consented to having sex with a condom. So
Yeah.
that was the consent. And then
Oh, so the
once,
stipulation,
right.
it's under the okay. I get you.
Mhm. Yeah. So I think
I
I
don't
think
know if that's like that's. Do you think that's a pretty far stretch, though? I mean, rape to stipulation.
I think I think it depends on your definition of rape. You know, I think
Under your definition, do you think that would be considered? Under mine, no, but
I
under
think yeah, I think it would be sexual assault. I don't think it would be like sexual rape is a type of sexual assault, but not all sexual assaults are rape. Under my viewing, it's definitely sexual assault
sure, yeah,
because
yeah,
you're
yeah.
violating a agreement, and therefore like you're not giving your full consent to
I
what's happening.
I'm following you. That would make more sense to me, I guess. I would more likely agree to that than the rape is like, whoa, that's pretty extreme.
I mean, I know that there's some rape survivors that would say you're cheapening the rape definition by calling it rape.
There's
I
obviously a lot of bias, I think, there. You know.
yeah, I mean, as someone who has been sexually assaulted but not raped, I really can't say,
Yeah.
but I'll leave that up to people who actually
Whoever.
have been raped
Sure.
to
Yeah.
say what they think. I mean, I think it's a personal opinion too. Talking about sexual assault and stuff, there's certain situations that one woman might consider herself raped, and then in the exact same situation, another woman might not. So, I think
And
it's also kind of personal.
and that well, so so it when you're saying like personal, right? I mean, I almost get the idea and the feeling, right? So and I I think a lot of men would disagree but also agree. I don't know where the percentages would fit on this, but I feel like, a woman could have sex, don't like the sex, and then say, you suck, rape. That's rape. Because you're going on feelings now.
I think that is an argument that's been made,
Sure.
but honestly, the statistics on false rape accusations are um, no more than any other crime that you could be accused of. Like, there's not a bunch of women going around like, yeah, I was raped because the guy had a tiny penis or something,
Right,
and it
right,
wasn't good.
right. But I
I
mean,
kind of
I think
feel
it's a scenario that, because it's so a lot of people would argue that it's becoming not equal, but an unbalance of power or um going with the trends and just seeing everything that's happening. I think a lot of people would argue that it's no longer about equality, and they make the same argument with BLM, for example, and other activists and social justice um, activism, protests, what have you. They make the same argument that it's no longer become an equal, but now, if you will, a privilege or an overpowering.
I think that is a response based on men feeling like they don't have free reign over a woman's body. Personally,
are those feelings validated, do you think, or
not in my opinion?
okay.
So I will give an example that has been more recent. So there was a porn star, James Dean, who
I only know the girl ones.
yeah. Well, anyway, so he was more forceful on set than what was agreed to contractually, right?
Okay.
And so that was seen as an abuse, right? Because like you're under, I don't know how the porn world works, really, like
Sure.
I'm not interested in that, but you have a contract of what's expected, and then like you go in and then like he does more than what was expected.
Sure.
And then, um the argument was for some people that, well, they're porn stars, what do you expect? Like, they're being paid to have sex. Whereas feminists were saying they were being paid and, contracted to have a certain type of sex, and then he went too far. And so, like, I'm sure James Dean thought, like, well, they're
Wait,
here.
James Dean, the sausage guy? Is that or no? Is that Jim?
No,
Dean?
that's Jimmy Dean. Yeah, no,
all right.
Yeah, I hope I have his name right, because now we're James Dean, the not rapist, but yeah, I think it's James Dean.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, I think men consider, like, once they're on top of you or whatever, like, well, you said yes to this, so I can go and do whatever I want now. Whereas women are saying, I am consenting to sex, but you need to, not hit me or,
Choke the
say
shit out of
abusive
me.
things.
Grab
Right.
my arm and bruise me. Yeah.
Right. Or stick it in a different hole than I wanted, like
Right.
things like that. And so like that kind of thing, men just feel like you consented to sex, so anything I do is free reign.
Sure. I get that. Yeah.
That's kind of,
it's an awkward thing because you don't want to ruin everything, and I get it. Yeah. Sure.
and I would say too, because you said, men know that no means no.
For the most, I don't think all of them.
I think,
I see what you're saying. I get how you're connecting these. Sure. It's a gray area.
Yeah, I think, well, even women who have said no, because I have, someone very close to me who said no specifically, and he did it anyway. And then she didn't know if that was rape or not, because she felt like maybe I didn't say no hard enough or enough.
Okay. No, I get. No. There are, just so I don't get anybody in trouble here, but there are situations, right? So like, they always say a man confuses a smile for an invitation, right? When women try to be nice, they confuse that niceness as she wants me. So, but also there are times when women, do say no, and not all women, but no means yes sometimes. It's a playful no, or it's I just need you to show me you want me. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's women that have play mind games. But I mean, you also have to think too that in a lot of situations, women feel threatened by men, like, especially when you're alone or whatever, like, where you have to kind of play it cool, because men have murdered women for saying no.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, we can say no, but like giggle and laugh and like act like it's not really no, but that's just like a defense mechanism to
Sure.
make sure that the guy is not like offended.
I get that. Yeah, I get
Mhm. Yeah. So, I mean, in just personally, I know like I've said no several times to men who then just keep going, 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 like pressuring and things like that. And, you know, that was when I was younger. So, like, I didn't have the confidence or, like, even the knowledge that, like, it wasn't normal. You
Sure.
know, boys will be boys. Like, that just means he likes you, kind of a thing.
Yeah. He made you
And,
cry. That means he likes you.
right. But in reality, what we're doing instead is we're teaching men that it's okay to just keep badgering the person.
And I think that's a fair argument. Yeah, I think that's it because if you're gonna look at it from one angle as a behavior, like you said, behavior is learned.
Mhm.
Yeah, you have to look at it from both sides. Yeah, to me, that's what equality is. Looking at it from both sides.
Mhm.
Not just looking at it from one side or one angle or one perspective. I swear, Chris, I'll get to your comment. I'm saving it for the end, because it's a good end comment. Um, this one though, and I don't know where this question fits in, if it's second or third wave feminism. So if I'm reading this right, is benevolent sexism holding the door open for women, lowering requirement standards to grant job accessibility to women a serious problem or detriment to society as a whole? So I don't
Um,
waves.
so so the first part of, like holding open a door, that to
So it's
me,
chivalry. That's chivalry,
right.
and they say chivalry is dead now because you're not, you're I don't know how to, a bitch boy or something like that, or you hold the door, you're giving a woman everything she wants, and
Hmm.
I feel women don't want that no more.
So I would say like it's nice to have the door held open for you, but like I do it for men and women. Like if you're just
You just
holding open the door
like
for
a
a woman,
grocery store or a gas station. Yeah, sure.
right? Like to me, it's patronizing to just hold open the door for just women. Like,
When did that change though? Because it used to be like, let me get that for you. You open the
right.
car door, you let her in before you got in. You know,
I I would say it's
ladies
good
first,
manners.
ladies first type deal.
I would say it's good manners, but I think the way that feminists look at it is that it's patronizing. It's
Okay,
it it's a nice gesture, but it's something that you should be doing for everybody. I mean, it's a little bit different,
fair
opening a
enough.
car door or something like that. I think that would be a personal preference for like a couple or whatever.
Okay,
Um, but as far as opening a door or offering to hold a heavy book or package or whatever, like if you see a woman struggling, don't just walk on by.
okay,
Like you can ask her if she needs help, but like also the expectation is that like women are now going to owe you for being nice too, if that makes sense. Like I did you a
a little bit.
favor,
Yeah, a
so
little bit.
now
Yeah.
you have to reciprocate.
I just kind of think of to bring it on the more extreme end, you just it's patronizing, to some women. Well, I will keep it general. I don't want to label every woman. Um,
Mhm.
for some women it's patronizing to open the door for them. But I wonder if those same women were on the Titanic and it was sinking and all the men said women and children first, if they feel the same way.
No, I would say like
Would they turn
children.
around and be like, no, men, please, you go first?
No. So in my mind, what I think should happen is children definitely should be first. Obviously, they have the most life to live, right? So that just makes sense. And then I think one caretaker should go with the child or children, whatever.
Does it
And
matter which one, or do you stand in the lines like it should be women?
no, it doesn't matter. Whoever, like,
So
I
if
would
a
say
man said, if I'm in that situation, if a man said, you go, are they being patronizing then?
no. But that's
So
like,
what's the difference?
okay, and so in the Titanic example, what I would think is like if you're as a couple, going with a child, one of you has
No,
to go with your
but it
child.
didn't matter if they were couples or not. It was straight gender. Don't matter if you're a couple.
No,
Women.
well then, no, I
Women
don't
and
agree with
children.
that.
Okay, so so why is it patronizing in that situation, but not in the car door situation?
I think because one is literally saving your life, and then the other one is just like,
But it's a form of unselfishness in the end, right? I mean, you're showing humanity, if you will. You're showing values, morals, manners. So why
well,
is doing that?
so I would argue that in a lot of cases, men expect something out of women for holding open the door, being
And
chivalrous.
right, right.
um, like if somebody opened the door for me, like that in and of itself isn't like patronizing, but like when it gets to a point where it's like, hey, I did this for you, I'm being really nice, I'm a nice guy, like now you need to go on a date with me, like, I mean, that's kind of how it is for a
Okay.
lot of women.
Okay.
um so that part of that question, I would
Yeah.
say like that's not a serious problem. The lowering the requirement standards to grant job accessibility. So I'm assuming it's a man. Assuming that he's talking about affirmative action. And affirmative action isn't about like getting someone a job who doesn't have the same qualifications as a man. It's when you're presented with a man and a woman, or like a black man and white man or whatever, if they have the same qualifications, then you have to assume that it was harder for the woman or whatever minority to get into that position to have the same qualifications, and taking that into consideration when you're hiring someone. So I
Yeah,
don't
I
see
think
that.
I think a lot of things, how, I mean, we all know how men get. We see, whether sometimes, I'm not, again, very general statement. I don't want to paint all men and all women in with a broad, very general statement. But
Right.
we do know how men get. I mean, we have a man here, qualifies, has the education, the experience, the skill set, everything. And then, sometimes, that nice bombshell, no education, but she's good on the eyes, she kind of flirts and smiles a lot and, acts, submissive and, all these things that men like, I'd pick her. I
I
mean,
would say
well, I mean, men, how
Mhm.
men think, how men are, just programmed to go after it, I mean, without a thought, Um,
Well,
is that fair? Is that fair?
I would
Because
say
we don't have enough women in the workforce. For
I would
example, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no
Go ahead.
no I would argue that the patriarchy makes men feel like they have to
Okay.
go after women, like, and they have to be like these macho, sex craved men, like that's how you're kind of brought up and raised.
Sure.
So I wouldn't necessarily say that is I wouldn't necessarily say that is like an innate thing. I mean, obviously sex is like a biological drive, right?
Yeah.
But like men don't just think with their
Shit.
dicks.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you guys have brains too.
Right.
And so like I think that's a more of a cultural thing, and I think that would be an unfair standard. I mean, affirmative action is, saying hire a qualified woman, not just hire any woman.
Even in construction, for example.
Mhm,
Because I mean, we have a lot of construction going on where I live. There
mhm.
are sometimes you do see a woman, in a construction hat with the vest, work boots, but guess what they're doing every single time?
Holding the signs.
Exactly. How is that equal work?
Well, I'm assuming that's just a cognitive bias, like you're confirming what you're saying,
Well,
based on like
yeah. I mean, if I'm seeing it, that's my experience. That's,
right.
I mean, how, I mean,
But have you like sat there and watched like the work site going on for the 8 hours or however 4 hours, however long they do it for?
I haven't watched, but I've drove by and she is still in the exact same spot as when I left.
I mean, I mean, you should go into a job that you can fulfill physically and emotionally and mentally. And if you can't, then you shouldn't be hired that way. But I would also say, because I have a disability and I have health issues that I'm trying to currently figure out that might lead to being more disabled. I don't know. But like there are certain rights that disabled people have, and it may be that she,
That's true. Yeah.
needed to be on light duty or whatever.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah.
but
Okay.
I would just say, like, I think we see what we want to see, you know,
I think
and
sometimes yeah.
because, like, I know I've seen women holding the signs, but I've also seen men holding the signs.
Right, right, right.
But it sticks out more when you see the women because then you think, well, what are the women doing?
Right.
You know?
Well, I mean, and I'm still asking that. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, it's jokes. So what is third wave feminism?
So third wave feminism is that cross section of like get um trying to get LGBTQ involved, trying to get Black women involved, trying to intersect all of that. And then also, it's turning more into sex positivity than the second wave, which was more about being able to say no, having rights to your own body, like through abortion and things like that. So it's more like your Sex in the City type of thing, like celebrating that you have a sexuality rather than just being able to say no, like being able to say yes and not feel like a slut.
It's funny that you say that though. Because I mean the sexual positivity and the sexual liberation, a lot of men I think would argue that that's exactly what it created, generation and generations of sluts.
I think being able to say no was more important at the time in the second wave than
I
it
agree.
was in
Yeah,
the third wave.
and I agree.
So
A woman
like
should have
there's a lot of overlap between the waves in terms of like what you're trying to achieve. I mean, gender equality still hasn't really been achieved even today. I would argue like we still don't have the equal rights amendment passed, like things like that. But um I would say there is overlap for sure.
okay. So do you agree with that statement that the sexual liberation and the sexual positivity has created a generation or generations of quote unquote sluts.
I wouldn't call them sluts.
Oh, well, I
And
mean, just for yeah.
I mean, but it allowed women to have sex with whomever they wanted, whenever they wanted. But men have had that right forever. I mean, like, again, like, men can go out and have sex with however many women that they want to. And then, you go back to your bros and, like, oh,
Uh,
you scored. And yeah, right,
yeah,
exactly. But who were they having sex with? A majority of the time it's not other men, it's women who are
right.
having sex with the men. So, like, I mean, I think it's unfair to call women sluts for doing the same thing men do, and it takes two to tango. So
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
mhm.
Um, yeah, you're absolutely. It takes two to tango. So there's a whole slew of things, I guess that, um, man, where to begin? So you're right. It takes two to tango. I just think like a mental image of things. There's a difference between something getting inserted into you rather than being the inserter. There's just something different about that. And you know, let's be honest. If men actually knew how many sexual encounters that a woman had, they probably wouldn't necessarily jump in the way that they have been. um and it kind of raises, and I don't blame, I guess, because women often ask nowadays. I didn't hear it like when I was younger. Maybe that's because I wasn't paying attention, but women often ask, where are all the good men at? But at the same
Mhm.
time, I don't blame a man for not wanting a woman to, no man wants a woman with too much liberation or too much sexual freedom. I mean, I just don't think men want that. And
I,
you can't blame a man for not wanting you if that's what you're going to do, essentially, because that's what I hear a lot now. Where are all the good men at? And
I mean, I get your point. I would say that, like, that's a personal choice and a personal preference. Like, I mean, and what is too much baggage? Like, is it one man, two men, four,
right,
10,
right,
20?
yeah,
Like, because on the opposite hand, like, you know, men often have more than one partner too. But I mean, like, I have had friends who are, religious and then wait until marriage and, like, that's their choice,
sure,
right? And
yeah,
so it's not like there's a lack of women who don't have sex before marriage or, aren't quote unquote loose. But,
sure,
um, as far as the good men go, I don't think that has anything to do with women being sexually promiscuous. I think that has something to do with, you know, more the way that men treat women, if that makes sense. Like, I know when I was going to college, I had a guy that we were just friends, and he would like judge everyone who looked like a slut, so to
sure,
speak.
yeah, sure.
Right. But then he had a girlfriend and like they had sex and stuff. And it's like, well, what's the difference between your girlfriend who's having sex
You're,
before she's married,
I,
versus
you
these
know,
other women doing the same thing?
because it's his.
Yeah,
It's different because
right.
it's his.
That's the thing. It's like
Mhm.
hypocrisy,
I get it. Yeah,
hmm like, it takes two to tango. I mean, it just, like, unless you are gay or bisexual, as a man, you're having sex with women.
sure.
Like, and so, why do you get to have all the sex, but women don't get to have an equal amount of fun?
Yeah, I mean, I understand. I understand what you're saying. I just don't have anything for you. um, but the Russian is coming through with all these great questions for us. So let's see here, and I get a feeling how you're going to answer this. So as a feminist, does the guest you believe that women should be more aggressive in starting relationships and perhaps even paying for dates?
Yeah, I mean, I've asked out men before. I
Yeah.
mean, and as far as like a first date goes, I don't think it should be expected that the man pays. Like, if the man wants to pay, that's his prerogative, you know.
Are you
Um,
going to stop them from paying?
no, but that's the choice. Like, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
when I've been on dates, I always go for my wallet, and then you know, if he says, "Oh no, 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 I
I
got
got
it,"
it.
like
Right.
you know,
Sure.
okay, I'm not gonna offend you
Fight them
by
for. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
like. So I
Ripping up
don't
the
have a
ticket is
problem
mine.
there. Right. Yeah, I'm not gonna fight you on it, but I'm gonna be polite and like at least try to split it. Or, you
Sure.
know, if I was the reason we're on the date, like and I picked the place, like then why not pay for it?
Sure.
But
Yeah.
I mean, like I guess I'm assuming they're gonna counteract with like, well, what if the man then expects you to pay for it? Would you date him again? Like and that to me, like I think that's a personal preference. Like
Sure.
as a feminist, I wouldn't see it as a negative, like having to pay.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't think so either. I think, if you guys are going on a date, I think for the most part, again, unless you've been, dating for 7, 8, 9, 10 years or married or whatever, it should be a Dutch thing, really. I think it should, you pay for you, I pay for me. And really that's kind of the society I think we're in now anyways, to be honest with you. Not 100, again, generalization, but um so do you think that feminism, we know that feminism has uplifted women and gave them more footing in social activities and culture and such and such and such. Do you think it has unintentionally destroyed men or made men weaker or, quote unquote, effeminated men?
no. I believe the patriarchy hurts men too.
Do you think it hurts it more than feminism, or do you think there's like an equal kind of unintentional consequences from both ideologies, I guess?
I think that the patriarchy hurts men more than feminism does because the patriarchy makes men feel like they have to be macho, they have to be strong, they have to be, you know, the provider of the family, right? And that means that men have grown up not being able to cry if they need to cry or, you know, emotionally
Sure.
express themselves. And like, you
No,
know, I'm assuming you're trying to get onto like toxic masculinity and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
So with toxic masculinity, it's not saying that, you know, um, being a man is toxic. It's just saying that when you are, um, when you are a man in society, you are taught not to cry. You are taught to be strong. You're taught to be forceful. You're taught to be aggressive. And then in turn, that means you're going out into the world with all of these pent up emotions and taking it out on other people, namely women, right? And like I know kind of like the anti-feminist argument is like, well, you know, um men commit suicide at higher rates than women.
Yeah, yeah.
And so like there's different theories about that. One is that men are just more impulsive, and so they commit suicide through means that are more damaging and therefore more um, successful than women do. But like, I think also that's probably a result of the patriarchy, where men can't ask for help if they're depressed because they
Very
can't
good point.
cry, like,
Yeah,
I
no.
mean, men should be able to cry.
It is a cultural, I guess, taboo, if you will. I mean, like two best friends, you got two best friends, two males. They're probably able to, I would think, call each other up and, shed a tear sometimes. I mean, not to the extent of women do, but I mean, if you really need that friend, I would think that would be acceptable to, but on like, can a man call 3, 4, 5, 6 friends? If a man has that many friends, can he
Mhm.
call that many friends and cry to them? No, I don't think he could. I don't think he could.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I do think that is a good point that you bring up, that it's just a cultural taboo for men to show feelings and talk to their friends, and if you have to cry. No, I think that,
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting that you brought that up, because it
Yeah.
is, men do commit suicide at an alarming rate, higher, much higher than, and again, you said that because of the point that they're more decisive. And you're absolutely right on that too, I think, and not to be a dick or anything, but I almost feel like, you know, because men are more decisive in what they do, when a woman does it and fails, it looks like, I need attention. And it very well could be. I mean, it very well could be. If you're trying to commit suicide in the first place, you obviously need some attention.
Yeah. Um, my degree is in psychology, so like that's kind of my passion. So I could go on and
No,
on
cool.
about it all day. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, the stigma around mental health to begin with is just abysmal. I mean, like, men and women don't feel like they should get help because it's, not accepted in society. Like, and, with this lockdown and quarantine and stuff with COVID, we're seeing like mental health cases increase because we can't go out. But it's a problem that's always been there. And I think a part of the problem is the patriarchy saying, like, you can't express your emotions, otherwise you're like a sissy if you're a man,
Yeah.
or you're just emotional, you're just a hormonal woman if you're a woman. So,
You're European.
well, my favorite thing to like reference is that the term hysteria um, comes from like, it used to mean wandering womb. Back in the day, they used to think women were hysterical because their womb was just going off without them.
Sure. Yeah.
And like, so that's why a lot of women were put into like asylums and stuff, because they were hysterical, and it was because of their womanhood, not because they
Right.
had
They were
mental
crazy.
issues or
Right. Right. Yeah.
right.
Um. Okay. So we're gonna go on about 15 more minutes.
Okay.
Um. And I want to get to Chris's question because it is a good question. It says, "What are the next steps of feminism, and what problems need to be addressed in the next 20 years?" I think it's a great question.
I think finally getting the Equal Rights Amendment passed, just saying that men and women are equal under the law, and, closing the wage gap, and um, helping Black women in particular who have been left behind by feminism from the beginning, I think is the main points that we need to focus on in the next 20 years. I think and also I would say, like, sex trafficking too. That's a huge issue.
I'm gonna go with you on that. Yeah, I can agree with. I think most people can. Because I mean,
Yeah.
when you're talking with sex trafficking, you're intertwining that with children as well. That's
Hmm.
something that not necessarily just affects women, but children as well. So I agree with you on 100% on that.
Hmm. And also maintaining the status quo as far as like, you know, Roe v. Wade and stuff like that, just because we're seeing more conservative judges in in the courts, making sure that we still have access to abortion. And like I think is it Mississippi that doesn't even have any abortion facilities anymore? I think it's
I think so.
Mississippi.
Yeah, it's one of them. So maybe
Mhm.
Alabama or yeah, it's one of
Yeah,
them.
one of them, yeah. So I mean, trying to just maintain access to that so women don't die. That would be nice.
Oh, so is that a real concern for you and I guess feminists? Is that if we start backtracking on these waves or rights or what have you that women have achieved over the years, do you kind of feel that you're on your way to death?
Yeah, I think so. First of all, abortions, like according to the CDC, like 1 in 4 abortions, so 25%, are medically necessary, right? So if you have to travel outside of your state to get an abortion that's medically necessary, like then you are at risk of dying. If you have to get, or if you want to get an abortion and can't get it in your state and you have to, go to back alleys and get the coat hanger abortions, you're going to die. Um, more deaths. And the feminist argument too is that pregnancy is a lot more dangerous for women than abortion is. Abortions are medical procedures, so as with any medical procedure, it's going to be dangerous, or there's risks. But pregnancy just physiologically changes your body. You're more at risk of having complications and dying. Women who are pregnant are actually murdered by their partners at a higher rate than if they aren't pregnant. So,
Really?
yeah, there's a lot of different factors that, if you completely eliminate abortion in your state, like abortion centers, then you're putting a lot of, especially poor people, at risk of dying.
Would you be all right? Okay, so let's say they rolled back or took away Roe versus Wade. Would
Hmm.
you be all right with, look, we're not just going to have open abortions anymore, but we are going to have abortions that fit these criterias? Would you be okay with that?
No, because it has to be guaranteed under the law that you won't be charged with murder if you have an
I mean,
abortion. But there's some that fight for murder charges for women who have like a miscarriage.
okay,
Um, one woman was like, she got in a fight and she got kicked in the stomach and then lost the child. Like she wanted the child, but
right.
like whatever happened when she got in the fight, she had a miscarriage.
Well,
And
I was going to say, because I mean, it's so tough with a lot of these situations. It really is, because so like we were saying before, it takes just like a relationship, it takes two to tangle, it takes two to fight too. I
mhm,
mean, unless she was like walking away, I don't want to fight you, walking away, and the other, it's so tough, you know what I mean, I don't think that's murder if she was walking away, but if she because look, I know like a lot of people think, until it's actually born, it's not life. Okay. I can respect that, or at least, listen to that and say we can agree to disagree. But when you are in a fight with somebody, you're putting that child in jeopardy, like huge jeopardy, whether it's born or not. And if it dies, which I don't understand how it can die if it's not even living in the first place. But so if the baby dies and you're in a fight, I do think that's murder. I do.
But so the woman that kicked her in the stomach wasn't charged of
Oh,
murder. It was
like
the
that. They should have both been charged. Yeah.
yeah. So it was yeah. So I mean, I understand your point, and as far as like as a feminist, well, okay, so personally, I would never have an abortion unless like it was medically necessary. That's just my view. But I still feel like it needs to be legal so that women have that choice and that, you know, if they're raped, they didn't consent to having that child in them, right?
Right.
And in incest, same thing. You
Yep.
know, if it's medically necessary, that means like 25% of the people who actually need an abortion or would want to get an abortion wouldn't have access to it unless they traveled out of state in Mississippi, if it was Mississippi.
Right.
You know, and so like there needs to be legal protections, and it can't be, you know, under law, like only in these certain circumstances can abortion be illegal or be legal, because then women are just gonna claim that they were raped, you know,
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
or you know, it was incestual or whatever, you know.
yeah.
So I think like it has to be under the law, it has to be legal for everybody. You know, they say states' rights and stuff, but like to protect the women in each state who can't even afford to like move if they wanted to, that needs to be legal.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I do agree with like the abortion thing, as far as the incest goes, as far as the rape goes, or you know, if the mother's gonna die, it's kind of up to, you know, her to decide, does she want to risk her life for the baby, or would she rather just try again, I guess, if you could say. And then so abortion, rape, incest, medical procedures, mental issues, you know, because they can test for some of that, you know what I mean? So those kind of things, like, I do agree with. Like, I think, like, you know, if we were to take away Roe versus Wade, I think those four things should remain in law to be legal, or at least have access to in all 50 states.
Yeah,
I don't,
but like I
yeah,
said, like then you can just claim like, well, I was raped. You
right,
know what I'm saying?
right. But you, again, if you did that, you know, you're gonna have to, you know, you're gonna have to file a police report. You're gonna have to prove that you were in fact raped.
Right, exactly. And then by the time anything gets done, it's probably
Woo!
past the
Too late.
time when it would be legal
Yeah.
to have.
You're right. You know, but touche. You're right. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've thought a lot about it because I
I
did
could
like,
tell.
you know, yeah, like because personally I wouldn't be for it. So, like, why is it necessary? And then that's what I've come to the conclusion on. You
Yeah.
know.
All right. Um, we went through a lot of comments here. Let's see if I can find maybe we can find something that I missed here. Something that's relative to, you know, kind of what we're talking about here. You know what, because what we did today was a pretty broad, you know, it was a nice broad umbrella on what to, you know, put feminism under or whatever. But I don't think, I would really like for, you know, you to come back and really like just pick, you know, a specific topic that feminism cares about, and then really dissect that, really get into that, because feminism is such a broad topic, you know, and that's kind of why I was, you know, trying to help it by going through the waves and discussing the waves, you know what I mean. But I would really, I thought this was good, and I thought it was productive. Yeah, I'd like to have you come back and just dissect little segments of it and really get down into it. because there's a lot of questions here, but it's just so broad that
Mm-hmm.
it has something to do with feminism, but you're gonna have to go on like a half-hour track, 15-minute track to get there type deal,
Mm-hmm.
multifaceted subject, if you will.
Right.
Yeah, I don't see any more comments that I would like to throw in here that you can address right now. I really appreciate you coming on. I know before I talked to your significant other, and I said, well, I'm waiting for her to get back to me. And he's like, oh, well, she said she's waiting for you to get back to her. So thanks for being patient with
Yeah, no problem.
it. Yeah, do you have a YouTube channel or a Facebook channel or something that you want to plug into or anything?
Nope, I'm just me.
All right. That's good enough. Oh, that's good enough. All right. Well, again, thank you for coming on. Everybody, thank you for engaging and participating, and it really helps out these live streams, and it makes it a lot more fun for the guests. And thanks for being respectful. Again, Jordan, thank you for coming on. I hope you choose to come back on with us sometime and talk more about this. This was fun, and I learned something too. So thank you.
I'm good, thank you.
All right. You have a good one.
You too.